In the heart of 14th century Italy, a land divided by fierce loyalties, a single wooden bucket would ignite a war. This isn't a myth. It's the bizarre, true story of the War of the Bucket, a conflict that pitted neighbor against neighbor, city-state against city-state, all under the shadow of a much larger power struggle. Welcome to History Bits Studio. Our story unfolds in a fragmented Italy, torn between two great factions, the Guelphs, who supported the Pope, and the Ghibellines, who backed the Holy Roman Emperor. This wasn't just a political debate. It was a blood feud that defined life and death. Bologna was a staunchly Guelph city, while its neighbor, Modena, was proudly Ghibelline. The 30 miles between them might as well have been a world apart. In Bologna, we meet Giovanni, a stonemason. His hands, calloused from carving stone for Bologna's grand towers and churches, are a testament to his city's ambition. He sees Bologna as a beacon of freedom and righteousness, guided by the holy hand of the Pope. To him, the Ghibellines of Modena are nothing more than arrogant rebels, defying God's chosen authority. He dreams of a day when all of Italy is united under the Guelph banner, a day of peace and prosperity. Every morning, he draws water from the central well, the same well that would soon become a symbol of his city's pride and humiliation. In Modena, we find Marco, a veteran soldier. His face is lined with the memories of a dozen campaigns. He's seen enough of the world to know that loyalty to an emperor or a pope means little on a battlefield. For Marco, being a Ghibelline is practical. It's about local power, about Modena's right to govern itself without interference from a distant pope. He scoffs at the pious pronouncements from Bologna. He sees them as hypocrites, using religion as a cloak for their own ambitions of dominance. Marco fights not for an abstract ideal, but for his home, his family, and the leaders who pay his wages. The air between the two cities was thick with tension. For years, border skirmishes and raids had been commonplace. Each side would cross the frontier, burn a few fields, steal some cattle, and retreat before a proper army could respond. Giovanni would hear tales of Modenese aggression in the city square and feel a surge of righteous anger. Marco, on the other hand, would lead some of these raids, viewing them as necessary business, a way to keep Bologna off balance and secure resources for Modena. The animosity was a slow-burning fire, just waiting for a gust of wind. That gust came in the autumn of 1325. According to some accounts, it started with a simple act of bravado. A small band of Modenese soldiers snuck into Bologna under the cover of darkness. They didn't set fires or steal gold. Instead, they made their way to the city's main well and snatched the common oak bucket used for drawing water. It was a prank, a gesture of contempt meant to mock Bologna's defenses. When Giovanni woke the next morning, the city was in an uproar. The bucket was gone. For him, this was no mere theft. It was an intolerable insult. This bucket was public property, a symbol of their communal life. The Modenese hadn't just stolen a piece of wood, they had defiled the heart of his city. He joined the angry crowds, demanding action. How dare they? How could their leaders let this stand? The cry for war was deafening. Marco, back in Modena, heard the news with a cynical laugh. A bucket. They were going to war over a bucket. He and his comrades paraded the trophy through the streets. It was a joke, a good one at that. He saw it for what it was, a clever way to humiliate a rival without spilling much blood. When the Bolognese envoys arrived, demanding the bucket's return, the lords of Modena, buoyed by the public spectacle, refused. They displayed the bucket triumphantly from their bell tower. The joke had just become deadly serious. Humiliated and enraged, Bologna declared war. They mustered a massive army, some 32,000 strong, a mix of trained soldiers and citizen militia, including Giovanni. He traded his chisel for a spear, his heart filled with a conviction that he was fighting for his city's honor. They marched toward Modena, a wave of Guelph fury ready to wash over the Ghibelline upstarts. Modena, vastly outnumbered, could only gather about 7,000 men. Marco stood among them. He looked at the eager, untrained faces of the Bolognese militia and felt no fear, only a cold professionalism. This wasn't about a bucket anymore. This was about survival. Under the command of the brilliant General Passerino Bonacolsi, the Modenese prepared for a desperate defense. They didn't wait to be besieged. In a daring move, the Modenese army marched out to meet the invaders. The two forces clashed on November 15, 1325, near the small village of Zappolino. The battle was short, but incredibly brutal. Giovanni found himself in a chaotic hell he could never have imagined. The orderly lines he had marched in dissolved into a maelstrom of screams, mud, and steel. Men he knew, fellow craftsmen and neighbors, fell around him. The professional Modenese cavalry, led by Marco and his comrades, smashed into the Bolognese flank. Marco fought with detached efficiency, his sword a tool of his trade. He saw the panic in the eyes of the citizen soldiers, men who were brave in the city square, but lost on the battlefield. He felt no hatred, only a grim sense of purpose. Within hours, the massive Bolognese army broke. It was a complete rout. Giovanni, terrified, dropped his spear and ran with the rest of them. They fled back towards the walls of Bologna, pursued by the relentless Modenese cavalry. 2,000 men lay dead on the field of Zappolino. Marco and the victorious Modenese chased the enemy to the very gates of Bologna. They didn't have the numbers to take the city, so they did the next best thing. They humiliated it. They held mock games outside the walls, taunting the defeated citizens. And, in a final act of supreme mockery, they lopped the top off a second bucket from a well just outside the city gates before finally turning back. The aftermath was devastating for Bologna. The loss of life was immense, and the shame was even greater. Giovanni returned to his workshop, his hands trembling too much to hold a chisel. The ideals he had marched out with lay shattered on the battlefield. He no longer saw glory in war, only waste and sorrow. The fight for honor had cost them everything. Back in Modena, Marco was hailed as a hero. He collected his pay and watched as the original stolen bucket was placed in the Ghirlandina bell tower as a permanent trophy of their impossible victory. He looked at the simple oak bucket and felt a strange sense of emptiness. So many died, so much chaos for this. It was just a piece of wood. The lords and politicians celebrated, but Marco knew the true cost. In the end, peace was brokered, and eventually some prisoners were exchanged. But Bologna never got its bucket back. To this day, a replica of that very bucket sits in the tower in Modena, a silent reminder of a forgotten war. So what does this strange conflict teach us? The War of the Bucket wasn't really about a bucket. The bucket was just a symbol, a flashpoint for decades of built-up hatred, political rivalry, and cultural pride. It shows how easily grand conflicts can be sparked by the most trivial of insults, how quickly calls for honor can lead to mindless violence. For Giovanni, The bucket became a symbol of lost innocence and the folly of blind patriotism. For Marco, it was a symbol of the absurdity of war, where men die for the pride of kings and the jokes of soldiers. It's a reminder that history isn't always made by grand armies and noble causes. Sometimes it's shaped by a single, stolen, wooden bucket. This was History Bits Studio.